In this hush, you sense the delicate dance between inertia and gravity, a quiet partnership that has cradled you since the first breath of your planet. Your body lies still, but deep inside your cells, the Earth's spin hums like a lullaby. It is so easy to forget this constant motion, the swirl beneath your feet, the tug of invisible hands balancing everything you know. Tonight, you slip beneath your blanket and let your mind drift into that hidden spin. You picture the Earth as a blue marble balanced on an unseen finger, twirling through darkness. The oceans, the forests, the mountains, all carried gently in this unbroken whirl. If you listen closely, you might feel it, a faint pull at the edges of your bones. This is inertia, the will of motion to continue, the promise that what turns keeps turning unless something whispers stop. But what if that whisper came? What if, in the hush of a single breath, the world forgot to turn? You imagine the hum beneath you fading, the gentle push of the ground stilling. Without the spin, inertia releases its grip. The force that nudged the wind, stirred the waves, tugged at your hair on a breezy day, all falls quiet. You see it now, cities frozen under a sun that no longer drifts from east to west. A single point of brightness pinned in the sky for endless hours, warming one half of the earth while the other slips into an unmoving night. Half the world in daylight, half the world in darkness. Two vast kingdoms divided by stillness. Your breath moves softly in your chest. You feel how your own body holds inertia too. How when you spin in a circle and stop, you still feel the turning inside you. The earth holds that same memory, only bigger, deeper, more patient than any heartbeat. It's not the rocks or soil alone that spin. It's the entire atmosphere too. The air you breathe races alongside the ground beneath it, pulled by the same invisible force. If the spinning stopped, the air would not stop so easily. It would roar forward, hunting for balance. A wind like no wind you've ever known, air untethered, racing westward at hundreds of miles an hour. You imagine forests bending, oceans pushing toward unseen shores, mountains catching winds that howl against their ancient ridges. Yet here, in your mind, it feels quiet. You lie still, safe in your bed, knowing that this is only a dream of physics. Unraveling, the real Earth keeps turning for you. But your thoughts play with the idea, inertia undone. Gravity alone holding the pieces in place. You drift to the equator in your mind, where the spin is strongest. There, the outward push of motion makes you lighter by the faintest breath. It lifts you ever so slightly, a balancing act against gravity's pull. If the spin stopped, gravity would hold you closer, not by much. Just a whisper of extra weight, a feather's worth on your shoulders. Yet even this tiny change would ripple through rivers, rocks, and roots. You picture the oceans, usually swollen at the equator by centrifugal force. Take the spin away, and water drifts toward the poles, seeking balance once more. Coastlines shift, islands rise and sink. The earth reshapes itself in patient silence. Mountains at the equator would stand taller, freer of the outward push. The crust beneath your feet would breathe a little deeper, settling into new forms over centuries. Still, the deeper mystery lives, not in what would change, but in what would remain. Gravity would endure, unchanged by the silence. The molten iron, heart within the planet would still churn, spinning differently than the crust above. It is this restless core that creates the magnetic field, wrapping you in quiet protection, a soft armor against cosmic winds. Without the spin of the surface, would the cores spinning slow too, would the shield weaken? You drift further into this thought, feeling the fragile layers that keep your sky safe from storms born among the stars. In this pause, you sense how life finds balance in motion and stillness. Both trees grow rings, measuring time in quiet circles. Tides rise and fall, pulled by the moon's gravity and the earth's turning dance. You imagine a world where the moon pulls alone, tides shifting gently but never drifting as far. Beaches would hold more secrets, shorelines would sleep in. Place. Your breath steadies as your thoughts circle back to you. Inside your own chest, a miniature earth turns. Your heartbeat pushes blood through capillaries, rivers that never forget their course. Even when you sleep, there is motion, the rise and fall of your lungs, the drift of your thoughts across synapses, like stars across a night sky. If the world stopped spinning, would your dreams still move? Would your mind invent new winds, new tides, to replace what the planet lost? Perhaps this is why you are here now, lying still, yet turning gently in thought, balancing inertia and gravity in the quiet of your imagination. In the silence, you sense how precious motion is, a whisper of beginnings that never truly end. The earth spins because long ago, when it was dust and fire and gas, it gathered that spin from the chaos that built it. All planets do. They keep spinning unless something greater says otherwise. Nothing has spoken that word yet, and so the hush remains only in your mind, a place to rest, to drift, to wonder. You feel the weight of gravity as comfort, the hush of inertia as possibility. Even in the idea of stillness, you find a pulse. Your breath is proof, a tiny cycle repeating, a promise that movement holds you close. Somewhere above you, the stars do not care if the earth turns or rests. They burn on, their own fusion spinning, elements into new stories. The Milky Way arches across your ceiling of thought, wheeling through space at speeds your bones cannot feel. Motion everywhere, even when the ground beneath you dreams of pausing. In this soft moment, you lie between motion and rest. You carry the world's spin inside your heartbeat. You let it slip for just a while, imagining a hush so wide that the wind forgets its path, the seas forget their waves. The days and nights lose their names. You exhale, still turning in your own small way, drifting deeper into the hush where questions linger like the quiet pull of gravity. And you wonder, if the world forgot to turn, what would become of the tides that breathe along every shore? And you wonder, if the world forgot to turn, what would become of the tides that breathe along every shore? You let this thought carry you outward, drifting like a message in a bottle across a dark and quiet sea. In your mind, you stand at the water's edge, toes pressed into cool sand that remembers each wave that ever arrived, each wave that ever left. Tonight, you slip beneath the surface of this question and let it wash over you. The ocean, restless and loyal, dances not only to the spin of the earth, but also to the gentle pull of the moon. Each night, each day, the moon's gravity tugs at the water, lifting it just enough to make it wander away from shore, then fall. Back again, a soft, endless breath of salt and swell. But if the spin slowed to nothing, this watery dance would lose half its steps. The tides would still rise and fall, but slower, more patient, leaning fully into the moon's quiet pull alone. You picture the waves stretching wider across the coastlines, lingering longer, not pushed ahead by the turning world. They breathe in, they breathe out, but the rhythm changes, softer, slower, like your own breath when sleep begins to drift your mind away. You imagine the great currents that circled the planet, invisible rivers within the ocean's deep blue. These currents are born from more than just the moon. They owe their strength to the spinning earth, to winds that race around its belly, to the way warmth and cold wrap around the equator and the poles. If the earth forgot its spin, these currents would lose their push. They would hush themselves, fall quiet, wander more than flow. You see the Gulf Stream, that wide ribbon of warm water that drifts from the Gulf of Mexico across the Atlantic, carrying heat to faraway shores. Without the spin's force, it would slow, spreading its warmth in new ways. Perhaps stalling in places, perhaps leaving parts of the sea strangely calm and still. The warmth that rides the waves would scatter slowly, more dream than river. Underneath the waves, life waits for the tides. Tiny plankton, drifting forests in miniature, ride the rise and fall like dancers. Crabs wait at the edge of the shore for just the right moment to scuttle and feed. Fish circle the reefs where currents bring food and carry away what is no longer needed. Without the steady spinning push, all these hidden lives must listen harder for the moon alone, must trust that her pull will be enough to keep the sea breathing. Lie in this thought, feeling your own body echo the ocean's hush. Your heart, too, is a tide. Blood flows out and returns, a current of life moving through your chest in a silent rhythm. Even as you sleep, this tide keeps its promise. The sea keeps its promise too, though it might change its song if the earth stilled its turning along the coasts. The world's great estuaries open like quiet mouths to the sea. They are where rivers meet salt water, where fresh and brine fold into each other. Here, tides are the keeper of secrets. They wash away what the river brings. They salt the edges of the land. They carve paths for birds, fish, and all the soft hidden things that live between the pull of land and sea. If the spin fell quiet, the estuaries would learn a new breath, a slower mingling of salt and fresh, a gentler promise between land and ocean. You drift deeper now, imagining the horizon where water meets the sky. If the earth stopped spinning, the clouds above this vast blue would slow too. The winds would lose their hurried paths that race west and east. Storms might linger longer over warm seas or fade into calm before they ever grow teeth. The air above still waters would settle like a soft blanket, holding warmth, holding secrets. And you, standing on the shore in your mind, feel how this quiet sea, this silent sky, would change not in anger but in patience. The planet would not roar, it would sigh. Waves would find new rhythms. Coasts would find new shapes. Life would learn to listen closer to the moon's ancient whisper above you. The moon circles on her orbit unchanged by the earth's pause. She leans closer, just enough to tug at the oceans, just enough to remind the waters how to breathe in the dark. The moon has pulled at earth for billions of years, coaxing the seas to rise and fall, wearing away stone, shaping sand, writing poems in salt and foam. Tonight, as you rest in this imagining, you see how everything that moves leaves its mark. Even when the spin stops, the memory of motion remains. The ocean will remember, the shore will remember, the moon will remember, her face turned toward you in soft, unbroken patience. You lie still, yet you drift, carrying on these quiet currents of thought. You sense how the sea beneath the sky would hold its secrets in this hush, how the hush itself would teach new rhythms to the sleeping tides. And as you breathe, you feel the edges of this world shift under your fingertips. The water soft, the sky wide, the moon above still pulling at your dreams. Somewhere in this imagined stillness, You listen for the winds that lose their way when the earth's spin falls silent. Somewhere in this imagined stillness, you listen for the winds that lose their way when the earth's spin falls silent, and your thoughts drift upward, climbing, stone by stone, until they rest among peaks that watch the sky longer than any living thing remembers. You picture these mountains standing patient in the hush, their jagged edges brushing against stars that do not shift across the night, as they once did. Without the spin, the winds stall, the clouds hold their breath, and the air curls itself quietly around the slopes, like a blanket tucked in for a sleep. It does not know how to end. You lie here, inside this idea, feeling the weight of rock beneath. Snow, the way mountains keep secrets locked in stone. When winds circle the globe, they carve these secrets slowly, carrying frost and rain, pushing clouds to drop their gift of snow, nudging rivers to be born. But now the wind has no direction. The world's turning breath has paused, and the peaks stand untouched by storms that no longer know where to go. In this frozen calm, you see old glaciers sleeping in narrow valleys, pale blue rivers of ice, that once crept down mountain flanks under the push of gravity and warmth and time. With no winds to bring warm air or stir new snow, these glaciers rest, thinning slowly, feeding streams that trickle down to plains where the ocean waits in quiet patience. You imagine walking along a high ridge in this windless dark, your steps soft, your breath clouding in air that does not move. Each exhale curls and fades in place, like a thought that does not wander far. You run your fingers along granite that was born in fire, lifted upward by forces you cannot see but trust to hold the earth's skin in these grand folds. The mountains have always been shaped by motion, the restless churning of the planets. Crust the rise of plates that crash together and heave stones skyward, the erosion of rain and wind that pulls peaks back down grain by grain. Without the turning, the winds hush, the storms calm, and the work of wearing away these towers slows to a crawl. The mountains wait in the dark, less battered, more patient. Yet even here, nothing truly stops. Inside these peaks, the stone still shifts by tiny measures. Cracks grow. Frost breathes water into rock, freezing, expanding, whispering the story of erosion even in stillness. Gravity does not sleep. It pulls loose stones downward, tumble by tumble, building slopes at the mountain's feet. The earth's pulse continues in slow creaks and distant rumbles too. Quiet for your resting mind to fear. You breathe in this silence and think of the thin air that wraps these summits. Normally, winds sweep oxygen away, mixing fresh drafts into every hidden valley and ridge. But now, the air lingers. You stand within it, feeling how it holds the sharp cold longer, how it presses soft frost against the granite skin. The silence is so complete, you can almost hear the slow settling of snow on stone. A hush piled on hush. In this dream, you wonder about life that clings to heights where air grows thin and cold. Mosses and lichens nestle in cracks, tiny plants that drink sunlight and melt water. Small creatures burrow between stones, finding warmth in fur and feathers. They too would feel the absence of wind, no swirling drifts to bury them suddenly, no sharp gusts to scatter seeds across a ridgeline. Life here must find new ways to move, when the air itself refuses to carry it. Your mind wanders back to the people who stand at these heights, climbers who measure themselves against summits, who test breath and bone against thin air and howling storms. Without the spin, the storms are fewer, the skies above clearer, the challenge different but no less real. The cold might press deeper without wind to spread warmth. The climb might feel lonelier without the rush of clouds chasing you up the final ridge. You picture ancient stones etched with fossils, reminders that these high places were once deep under oceans, buried in darkness, pressed by time and lifted skyward by the slow heartbeat of tectonic drift. The mountains hold memories of seashells, coral, tiny bones that once drifted with currents far from this frozen hush. Now they wait beneath your fingertips, silent witnesses to the slow dance of plates and countenance still inching forward under your feet, whether the surface turns or not. In the quiet, you lean against a boulder, warmed by your imagination alone. You sense how vast the night sky feels when you stand so close to it. Stars above you seem to hang in place forever. Without the spin, constellations pause in the same window of your sky. What once circled overhead now glows steady, a roof of distant suns unshaken by the ground beneath. You breathe in, noticing how small you are next to these unmoving giants. And yet, you too are made of stone and salt and time, minerals in your bones, metals in your blood, all once part of the same restless crust that lifted these mountains skyward. You belong to this hush as much as the peaks do, waiting, listening, wrapped in air that forgets how to roam. Your thoughts linger in this frozen dark, where the mountains wait for the wind to remember its name, for the clouds to remember their paths. Here, even the sky seems to hold its breath, draped in stars that watch over stone. And somewhere far below these ridges, you begin to sense the still air drifting further into valleys, across plains where the winds once carried warmth and storms that now lose their way in the silence. And somewhere far below these ridges, you begin to sense the still air drifting further into valleys, across plains where the winds once carried warmth and storms that now lose their way in the silence. You lie inside this hush, picturing the invisible highways that once circled the planet in ribbons of air, strong and sure. Now those paths waver and scatter, losing the force that gave them shape. You feel the ghost of jet streams, those swift rivers of wind that flow high above your sleeping form, pulling weather across continents, carrying clouds and storms like messages written in vapor. Without the earth's spin, these streams forget their speed. They loosen like threads untwisting from a spool, drifting into softer patterns that wander without direction in your mind. You watch a map of moving air fade into a gentle swirl. Storms that once raced across oceans, spun up by the turning world, beneath now drift lazily, unsure of where to go. Cyclones weaken before they grow teeth. Cold fronts lose their sharp edges. Heat lingers where it settles, no longer nudged aside by a restless wind, beneath this sleeping sky. You imagine the plains wide grasslands that lean into the wind, fields of tall stalks that bend and whisper when the breeze rushes through. Now they stand still, listening for gusts that never come, for whispers that never arrive. The hush feels heavy, draped over the land like a blanket that never lifts. You breathe in the thought that wind is not only motion but memory. Each gust that brushes your cheek carries warmth from the tropics or coolness from the poles. Each breeze tells a story of distant mountains, of seas where sunlight lifts water into clouds that drift for days before falling back to earth. The wind is a courier for warmth and rain, for pollen and seeds, for storms and silence alike. You drift deeper, picturing the great desert sands where winds once sculpted dunes into gentle waves frozen in time. Without that push, the dunes wait for a new hand to shape them, grains settling in quiet heaps that shift only with the smallest stirrings of air. The world of drifting sand falls calm, as if holding its breath alongside you. Your thoughts follow the winds into forests. Here, air once threaded through leaves, carrying whispers between branches, rustling stories from root to crown. Now the leaves hang motionless, cradling pockets of warmth or chill that do not mix easily without the breeze to stir them. Small creatures that once read the wind for signs of rain or prey now listen harder for the hush that reveals nothing. Above it all, high in the atmosphere, the absence of spin changes everything. The Coriolis force, that gentle twist that sends winds curling clockwise or counterclockwise, shaping hurricanes. Guiding currents, falls away when the earth's turning breath is lost. Without this subtle nudge, air drifts straight but aimless, losing the familiar spirals that once gave storms their power. You wonder how it would feel to stand in a place where wind has forgotten its name. No breeze to lift hair from your neck, no rush to push against your skin. Your breath becomes your only wind, a soft tide moving in and out, the last whisper of motion in a world that grows still. Yet even in this hush, the earth's warmth and coolness still rise and fall. The sun still heats the land in places where it does not move, where day lingers endlessly. Heat still pushes air upward in columns, gentle drafts that drift higher and higher, carrying secrets skyward where they dissolve slowly. At night, in the endless shadowed half of this motionless world, cold air sinks and settles. Without the spin to spread these breaths of warmth and chill, they pool like hidden lakes of temperature, separate and patient. In this world, the seasons shift more by the tilt of the Earth's axis than by the swirl of its spin. The tilt remains, forever leaning toward and away from the sun as the planet orbits through space. So the warm and cold still trade places. But the winds that once carried that warmth quickly across oceans and continents are too tired to keep. Up, the balance comes more slowly now, a conversation without the rush of words. Your thoughts wander to the creatures that rely on winds more than you. No birds gliding on updrafts for thousands of miles, seeds floating from one clearing to another, insects drifting on invisible breezes to find new places to land. Without these unseen rivers, migration's slow, pollination waits, flowers dream of visits that come less often, carried now only by what little air still stirs. You rest inside this vast hush, feeling how much life depends on air that moves. How storms feed rivers, how rains soften soil, how clouds cool the land before drifting on. Without the spin, without the winds to push clouds across thirsty plains, rain comes slower, more local, more shy. Lakes shrink in places where storms fail to travel. Forests adapt, learning to drink from deeper roots. Leaning toward small breezes that might still find them, you breathe in, sensing how the air in your room moves gently because of the warmth of your own skin, the draft along a hallway, the sigh of your lungs. Even here, in this imagined world where the spin has stopped, you create your own currents, tiny winds that carry your warmth, your presence, your dreaming thoughts, and as you lie within this hush, you feel the softness of air that forgets its path, yet finds a way to wrap around you all the same. The wind may lose its way, but warmth and coolness still drift. Slow as sleep, soft as dreams, dot in this deep, quiet night. Your mind drifts toward the sun that stays pinned in place, above a world half-shadowed, half-endlessly bright, a sun that refuses to move, holding its warmth in one place while the wind stands still in this deep, quiet night. Your mind drifts toward the sun that stays pinned in place above a world half-shadowed, half endlessly bright, a sun that refuses to move, holding its warmth in one place while the winds stand still. You open your eyes inside this thought, and the first thing you feel is how heavy sunlight can become when it never leaves. You imagine standing at the edge of this unmoving day, where the sun hangs forever just above the horizon. It does not climb, does not set. It fixes its gaze on the ground below, pouring the same gold light onto one face of the earth, while the other lies wrapped in endless night. You sense the line between these two worlds, the place where dusk and dawn forget to shift. One step forward, you stand in the day, dry heat pressing against your skin, the ground warm under your bare feet. One step back, you slip into night, frost creeping toward your breath, shadows folding around your shoulders. You drift along. This thin line, a twilight border that circles the globe like a seam stitched between day and darkness. Here, you feel the hush of a sunset that never arrives, the promise of a sunrise that never comes. Plants bend toward the sun's frozen glow on one side, reaching for warmth they cannot outgrow. On the other, leaves curl inward, holding tight to what little heat the ground can offer. In the places where the sun holds its brightest gaze, the earth dries out. You see deserts widen, sand bleached white under unblinking daylight. Rivers shrink back into cracked beds, searching for shelter in underground veins. Lakes sweat themselves into the sky, but without winds to carry clouds, that stolen water cannot drift far. It clings to the warm air until it falls back as sudden, heavy rain, carving canyons that dry again just as quickly. You imagine how life finds a way, even here. Some creatures burrow deep to escape the sun's endless stare. Foxes curling in cool dens, insects weaving tiny tunnels where the day cannot touch them. Plants turn leaves edgewise to the light, thin blades folding against the heat, roots diving downward to drink from secret springs. And in the long night, where the sun's warmth never arrives, frost claims the ground like a patient sculptor. You see snow that does not melt, ice that deepens season after season, building layers of silence and shadow. Trees that once woke to spring now stand like frozen statues, branches locked in perpetual winter. Beneath this cold skin, seeds sleep longer, waiting for warmth that no longer circles back. Your breath drifts through these two halves, the baked and the frozen, the blazing and the silent. In this stillness, time itself feels different. The bright side, there is no dawn chorus of birds greeting a rising sun. There is no hush of dusk calling them home. The endless day blurs hours into a single beam of light that never shifts. Shadows lie pinned beneath rocks and branches, never growing longer or shorter, never crossing the earth to remind you that time is passing. On the dark side, stars burn, forever in a sky that does not yield to morning. You imagine standing there, looking upward, your breath curling into constellations that never fade. With no sunrise to wash them away, the stars feel closer, their patient shimmer undisturbed. By dawn, aurora lights might flicker here, dancing where the earth's magnetic skin still hums and bends charged particles into color. They weave ribbons of green and violet above the frozen ground, a soft reminder that the planet's core still stirs, even when its spin has paused. Your thoughts wander to people living in this strange stillness. On the edge of eternal day, they build homes with walls thick enough to hold back heat, roofs designed to catch the brief, sudden rains that have nowhere else to go. Crops grow in bands of twilight, where the sun's light is gentle enough to coax leaves open, but not so fierce as to scorch them. Farmers wake and sleep by shadows that never shift, marking time by the rhythm of work and rest rather than the arc of a moving sun. On the dark side, people learn to keep warmth, close fires burning in stone hearths, lamps fueled by oil drawn from seeds or animals hardy enough to live in the cold. They farm in tunnels, under lamps that mimic a sun they can no longer trust to rise. Their seasons are counted not by the sky but by the breath of the earth beneath. The way warmth drifts up from deep within when the surface gives nothing back. You rest inside this thought, feeling how life adapts when the sun refuses to move. You see birds that once migrated, now nesting close to the line between day and night, drifting a few steps forward or back to find the balance between warmth and cold. You see people following that same twilight path, building cities along the seam where dusk stands still, learning to live in the soft border that holds both light and shadow in the same breath. Here, time feels circular yet still. Days do not pass, they stretch and wait. Nights do not fall, they settle and stay. Without the spin, the heartbeat of day and night slows into one long inhale, one endless exhale. Above this quiet world, the sun burns on, uncaring, unchanged. It is the earth that moved, not the star. The sun stays true to its own fire, pouring light outward without thought of whether the ground beneath turns to greet it or hides in the dark. Its warmth does not chase you, you chase it with every rotation that no longer comes. And so you lie here, caught in this dreaming hush, feeling the weight of days that never end and nights that never break. You wonder how the first people to wake in this unmoving world would count time without the sun's arc to guide them. Would they find new clocks inside the steady beat of their own hearts? Would they read time in the bloom and sleep of flowers caught forever in twilight? Your breath steadies, your mind floating along the frozen line where day and night meet but never trade places. In this hush, you sense how the earth's secret heat still pulses beneath deserts and ice, how the molten heart within does not care for the sun's gaze or the frozen sky above Arn. As you rest in the glow of this impossible day and unending night, you drift inward, wondering how deep below your feet the earth still moves, a quiet fire waiting to remind you that spin or no spin, the world's heart does not sleep. And as you rest in the glow of this impossible day and unending night, you drift inward, wondering how deep below your feet the earth still moves, a quiet fire waiting to remind you that spin or no spin, the world's heart does not sleep. That thought carries you further down, through stone and salt, into the secret realm where oceans hold the memory of motion. You imagine slipping beneath the waves, your mind gliding into currents that once circled the planet like wide, invisible rivers. These currents, born from the earth's spin, from wind's restless breath, from the warmth and chill that swirl at the equator and poles, now grow still, drifting into sleep like you. You feel the hush of water that no longer races across the globe, the Gulf Stream, that wide path of warm ocean flowing from the Gulf of Mexico to the cold Atlantic, slows until it is more pond than river, its warmth spreading outward like a forgotten sigh. Where it once carried life, seeds, heat, and storms, now it drifts in place, losing its push, whispering only to the deep dot in your mind. You float among drifting plankton, tiny green drifters that rise toward light and sink into dark, the first breath of food for life beneath the waves. Without strong currents to carry them far, they gather in sleepy clusters, blooming and fading in smaller pools of warmth and stillness. The ocean's breath grows shallow, like yours, calm and unhurried. You sense the great conveyor belt that usually pulls warm water toward the poles and cold water back to the tropics. This endless loop, driven by the spin, by winds, by salt and temperature, keeps the ocean alive and the climate gentle. Now, without spin, the belt sags. Warm water piles up where the sun's unblinking gaze holds it captive. Cold water pools in shadows where the frozen night never lifts. The trade of warmth and chill slows to a hush. Below you, deep currents move like thoughts half forgotten, slow rivers flowing between continents, tracing paths cut long ago when the world first found its rhythm. These hidden streams still drift, but with no push to guide them, they lose their urgency. Nutrients settle, life learns new ways to feed and grow. Some creatures follow the last soft trails of moving water. Others stay put, building tiny worlds around warm vents that pulse like the Earth's secret heartbeat. You drift near the polar seas, where ice claims the surface in thick sheets. Usually, winds and spin break the ice apart, send pieces drifting south to melt and feed the ocean with fresh water that shapes the currents below. But now the ice stays longer, frozen in place under the sun's steady stare or the endless night's embrace. Beneath the lid of white water lies calm, trapping secrets in the cold. You imagine great whales gliding under frozen seas, listening for currents that once guided their long migrations. Now they navigate by memory and instinct alone, finding new routes through a maze of still water and deep hush. Schools of fish gather in clusters around undersea mountains, places where upwelling currents used to bring food from the dark. Without that steady lift, the ocean's pantry changes shape, and life reshapes itself to match. Even here, stillness is not silence. Tiny waves still whisper against coasts. Tides still rise and fall under the moon's quiet pull, though slower now, broader and softer. The spin no longer lends its hand to stir the water's edge, so the sea breathes differently, a long, drifting exhale that spreads slowly over beaches and mangrove roots, then retreats with patient grace. You think of coral reefs, bright gardens beneath clear waves, alive with color and motion. These reefs depend on moving water to carry fresh food, to sweep away what no longer serves. Without the spin's push, the currents lose their strength. The reefs listen for new rhythms. Some corals grow slower, some reach higher to find tiny tides that still carry whispers of food. Fish dart among them, weaving slow dances through quiet gardens that wait for water to remember how to move. Your breath matches the ocean's hush. Now, in and out, in and out. You are a drifting current too, small but steady. The salt in your blood once drifted through ancient seas, carried by currents much older than your name. You carry that memory within you, a reminder that motion never truly ends, it only softens, hides, waits. You drift deeper into trenches where the seafloor folds in on itself like a secret. Here vents crack open in black rock, releasing warm plumes of minerals that feed entire kingdoms of life hidden from sunlight. These warm fountains do not care if the spin has paused. They bubble and flow from the earth's molten heart, a reminder that movement comes not only from the surface, but from within. You rest beside this thought that the ocean, like you, carries warmth inside even when the surface stills. Its slow rivers, its sleeping currents, its drifting plankton and resting tides all breathe in the dark, waiting for a push that might never come. Above you, the sun stays pinned where it is. warming some parts of the sea into endless bloom, while others lie under a blanket of frozen shadow. The warmth and cold still dream of each other across the unmoving world, sending faint trails of mixing water to meet in hidden places. As you float through this vast, quiet realm, you sense how life adapts, how fish find new ways to spawn in shallower bays, how turtles follow the moon's call when the currents no longer guide them home, how the sea's hush becomes a new kind of cradle, rocking life not with waves but with the soft memory of motion. Held deep inside, your own breath drifts with these hidden tides, carrying warmth through your veins the way ocean currents once carried warmth across the earth. You belong to this water too, a small current of thought and salt and sleep, and as you lie here, rocked by these slow sleeping currents, you begin to feel the gentle pull of the moon above her ancient promise that even in the hush, the tides will remember how to rise and fall. And as you lie here, rocked by these slow sleeping currents, you begin to feel the gentle pull of the moon above her ancient promise that even in the hush, the tides will remember how to rise and fall. This thought drifts downward through your body, down to the soles of your feet, to the hush of your bones pressing into the earth. You sense the invisible hands that hold you here, gravity's patient embrace, steady and sure, even as the winds lose their way and the currents fall still. Gravity does not waver. Its pull does not fade when the spin stops. Instead, it grows just a breath stronger, as if the planet is drawing you a little closer, reminding you that you belong. You picture the spin that once lifted you ever so slightly away, a soft outward push that balanced the downward tug. Without that spin, without that gentle outward pull, you feel yourself settle more deeply into the earth's waiting arms. You grow heavier by the weight of a whisper, not enough to bend your bones, but enough to remind you that the ground always waits. Beneath you, you imagine standing on this still world. Your feet press into the soil a tiny fraction more, your steps marked by a deeper imprint. Each heartbeat sinks you closer to the planet's slow breath. You are anchored, steady, a part of this unmoving skin that stretches beneath oceans and mountains alike. You drift through the thought that gravity is not just weight, but connection. It is the unseen tether that binds oceans to basins, rivers to valleys, air to the curve of the sky. It is why tides follow the moon's soft call, why mountains do not float away, why you feel the earth in your spine each time you lie down and surrender your own weight to sleep. Without the spin's balancing push, gravity holds you a little tighter. You wonder how it would feel if you leaped into the air, a small jump that lands sooner, your body drawn back just a touch faster than before. Birds that once soared on wind and spin now beat their wings against an air that does not rush to lift them. They fly closer to the ground, tracing new patterns in the still sky. You drift deeper into this thought. Picture the equator, that wide belt where the Earth's spin once gave its strongest outward push. There, people would feel the difference most. They would stand a little heavier in the same skin. The sun's unblinking light above them, the hush of sleeping winds, the quiet hush of drifting tides, and now the weight of gravity's pure touch. Untempered by spin, you imagine how this gentle shift shapes life. Raindrops fall straighter, pulled more firmly from clouds that drift slower. Rivers flow just a breath more eagerly downhill, no longer nudged sideways by the earth's turning shoulders. Water finds its deepest places more directly, carving new paths that listen only to gravity's steady song. You feel this same force deep within you, the way your bones grow denser to hold your weight, the way your muscles carry you upright. Against the pull, each step you have ever taken, each dream you have ever dreamed while lying on your back, has been made possible by this quiet, constant embrace. You think of roots threading through soil, seeking water and minerals, pulling themselves deeper as gravity calls. Trees stand tall because they trust the earth to hold them steady. Without the spin, the trees do not sway as they once did, yet their roots hold them all the same. Tethered by an unseen cord to the planet's patient heart, your breath softens in this thought. You realize you are not separate from this pull. You are part of it. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the salt that drifts in your tears. All these pieces come from the same earth that holds you close. You are stardust drawn together by gravity's hand, gathered into a shape that dreams and breathes and feels the hush of a motionless world. Somewhere far above, the moon pulls at you too, though you do not feel it in your skin. Its tug is gentler than Earth's, a soft reminder that gravity is not a chain, but a bridge. It binds you not just downward, but outward, linking you to tides and orbits, to the hush of drifting plankton and the frost that clings to endless night. You drift here, inside this thought of weight and stillness, and you wonder how life will lean into this change. You picture animals heavier by a heartbeat's measure, trees sinking roots just a finger's width deeper, mountains pressed firmer to the bedrock beneath. Nothing sudden, nothing harsh, just a subtle shift, the world holding itself together more tightly, a quiet gathering in the hush left behind by the spin. Your eyes close, feeling the earth's surface beneath you, the warmth of its hidden fire far below. Gravity tethers you to that warmth, to that molten core that still turns in small, secret ways, even if the surface stands still. You belong to this pull, to this hush, to this cradle that does not forget you. You let your body rest heavier now, sinking softly into the bed, into the floor, into the ancient rock and soil that waits below. The pull you feel tonight is the same pull that keeps the moon from drifting too far, the same force that shapes the sun's fire into a round, bright promise. And as you breathe, heavy and calm, you wonder what lies deeper still, beneath rock, beneath soil, in the warmth that does not sleep, the heat that reminds you even an unmoving world still holds its secret fires within. And as you breathe, heavy and calm, you wonder what lies deeper still, beneath rock, beneath soil, in the warmth that does not sleep, the heat that reminds you even an unmoving world still holds its secret fires within. You rest with this thought, and as you do, another feeling drifts upward, time itself unanchored, drifting through the hush above that hidden fire. You lie still, and in this stillness you notice how the turning of the earth once kept your days in order, a spin so steady you hardly sensed it until it paused. Now there is no sunrise to pull you from sleep, no sunset to whisper you back to dreams. The clock loses its hands, the hours dissolve like mist. You float in this timeless dark, picturing what it means for the world to hold its breath between seconds. Without dawn and dusk, the cycle of light that once ruled your hours flattens into an endless glow on one side and an endless night on the other. Where the sun stays pinned, time feels too long, too bright. Where night holds its frozen ground, time feels deep and dreamlike, unhurried. You drift across both halves. On the bright side, people learn to measure hours by the arc of shadows that never shift. They find new ways to name morning and afternoon when the sun no longer rises or falls. Meals are eaten when hunger calls. Sleep comes when eyes grow heavy. Not when the sky changes color. Days blur together like beads on a string with no knots to mark the start and end. In the frozen night, time moves differently. Here, the sky is always dark, and stars blaze on without a rival sun to chase them away. People look up and see familiar constellations frozen in place. They learn to count time by the drift of planets, by the patient dance of the moon tracing circles overhead, a clock that ticks not by hours but by orbits. You imagine how you would feel, waking in a world without sunrise. Would you miss the soft spill of morning light across your eyelids? Would you miss the way dusk paints rooftops gold before giving you back to the dark? Or would you find a new comfort in this timeless hush, your body free to listen to its own quiet rhythm? You picture a family in the bright land. They build their days around the gentle order of tasks, tending gardens in the soft edge of the twilight band, harvesting when crops swell ripe under endless sun. They sleep behind thick walls, shutters drawn to hold back the light, dreaming beneath layers of cloth that mimic the comfort of night in the frozen dark. Another family lights lamps that flicker against walls of stone and snow. They tell stories by firelight, mark seasons by the growth of children, by the soft bloom and fall of hardy plants under greenhouse glass. They watch the moon with patient eyes, tracing its pull on the unmoving sea, feeling its cycle like a distant clock that never forgets to move. Without sunrise and sunset, festivals shift, no longer tied to the tilt and turn of the earth. They grow from within, songs shared on the longest watch of the cold, dances offered when the fields yield food beneath the constant glow. People carve their own calendars in stone and memory. They tell time by the slow beat of planting and gathering, of birth and old age, by the hush of snow and the hush of rain. Your mind drifts to ancient people, long before ticking clocks. They read time in the stars, in the shadows cast by stone circles, in the way birds flew south or flowers turned their heads. They counted time by the warmth of a hearth, the length of a tale told before bed. You feel that old knowing now, the quiet reminder that time has always been a circle, soft and patient, moving whether you measure it or not. You breathe deeper, imagining how your own body keeps its secret clock. Cells that divide and renew, your heart that beats its soft drum, your breath that drifts in and out like waves. These tiny hands never forget to move, even when dawn does not come. You are your own measure, sunrise in your chest, sunset behind. Your eyes when sleep gathers outside. The stars mark time for you if you wish it. They move so slowly you could spend a lifetime learning their drift. Some people lie awake through the frozen night, tracing constellations that circle above like ancient guardians. Others watch the slow crawl of planets, the rare blink of meteors that cross the sky without caring that the sun does not rise. You feel the hush of a world that no longer counts time by spinning. You imagine how you might wake when your body says wake, rest when your bones grow heavy, eat when your hunger hums. Freed from the clock's tick, your thoughts stretch into longer dreams, wider silences, softer moments. You rest inside this drifting hour that has no name. You are a child of a spinning earth, but here you belong to its stillness, to a quiet passenger on a planet that whispers, be still, be slow, be here. You think of the moon's pull on the tides, how even the sleeping currents remember to rise and fall. You think of how seasons might drift forward still, tugged by the earth's tilt around the sun, by the distant heat that circles wide and slow. Some rhythms outlive the spin, the orbit, the lean, the long loops drawn by gravity's gentle. Pen. So you lie here in this timeless night, held by an earth that hums beneath you. Above you, stars offer stories if you wish to read them. Within you, your heart keeps its patient measure. Breath in, breath out. Your own quiet clock that does not lose its hands. And as you drift further into this hush, you wonder what other clocks might keep their promise. Clocks that burn bright at the heart of atoms. Clocks that tick in the secret life of rocks. Clocks that measure not hours or years, but eons. Clocks that remind you time is not lost, only changed, only softened, only waiting to be heard in a slower way. And as you drift further into this hush, you wonder what other clocks might keep their promise. Clocks hidden in the heartbeat of stars, the patient breath of drifting countenance, the ancient timekeepers that sleep deep in the earth's molten heart. You feel this question settle into the soil beneath you, into the roots that wait patiently for a dawn that may never come. You slip gently into forests that stand quiet on a world with no turning sun. Here, each leaf remembers the soft touch of daybreak, but learns new ways to reach for light that no longer moves. On the sun's frozen side, the forests stand bathed in unending glow. Trees grow taller than they ever have, soaking up warmth that never fades. Their branches unfurl wide canopies like sails, always catching windless light. You wander under these endless crowns, your feet brushing fallen leaves that never know the hush of night. Flowers open wide and stay open, there. Colors bright, but their cycle paused. No dusk to close them gently, no cold to bid them sleep. Some plants adapt, folding their petals by instinct alone. A private ritual of rest when shadows never come. You slip deeper into the half-light, drifting toward the lands caught between eternal day and endless night, a dusky belt where trees lean sideways, their roots pulling toward warmth, their branches stretching into the soft half-shadow. Here, you feel the hush of struggle and invention. Plants twist their stems, turn their leaves, seeking the delicate balance between light's steady touch and the night's soft shelter. On the frozen side of the world, the forests grow slower. Here life teaches patience in the absence of sun. Moss and lichen creep across stones and bark, gathering faint warmth from the earth's quiet heart. Trees stand like dark sentinels, their growth rings widening by the breath of hidden nutrients rising from the soil. Some roots push deeper to sip the warmth far below, finding comfort in the gentle fire that does not sleep. You lie down among these roots in your mind, feeling the hush of life that waits and watches. Animals too, you imagine, have learned to bend their rhythms to this new silence. In the bright forests, creatures sleep behind broad leaves, burrowing into the shade of giant trunks when their bodies long for darkness. Night creatures blink into endless day, crafting nests in hollow logs, waiting for a dusk that never comes, but that they remember in their bones. In the dusklands, life drifts in balance. Small animals find pathways through shadows that never grow longer. Owls hunt under steady twilight. Insects hum along half-lit leaves. Their tiny wings catch the glow that hovers at the edge of day and night. Life here feels like a whisper, a promise that even when the world forgets to turn, hearts still remember how to wait. On the frozen side, creatures curl into warmth wherever they find it. Deep dens beneath snow, burrows lined with fur and moss, hidden caves that gather the earth's breath. Some animals grow thicker coats, sleep through seasons longer than any winter that came before. Some emerge only when the moon's soft pull brings faint tides of warmth across frozen plains. You drift through these forests, feeling the quiet revolutions of seeds that sprout in unlikely places, vines that curl towards stray beams of light, fungi that glow in the dark, carrying their own small lanterns through shadows that do not lift. Life does not give up its search for warmth. It invents new ways to wait, new ways to bloom, new ways to dream of dawn. You picture people walking through these forests, to tending gardens under eternal sun, planting crops that grow without pause. Farmers who must find new ways to rest when fields never sleep. In the dusklands, they craft greenhouses that gather precious light and shade in equal measure, coaxing food from the hush where warmth and cold share the same soil. You rest in this thought that life does not surrender easily to stillness. Roots push deeper, leaves turn to meet the light that never shifts. Flowers open and close by memory alone. Creatures burrow, gather, migrate by instinct stronger than any clock. People adapt to, carrying seeds in their pockets, warmth in their fires, stories in their voices that remind them what it means to wait for dawn. Somewhere, you imagine, a child plants a tree in the dusk, a small seedling that will grow crooked toward the soft edge of the sun's glow. That child does not count days by sunrise, but by the unfurling of new leaves, the soft spread of shade that offers a hint of night where none truly falls. And deep below, in the earth's warm veins, the quiet fire feeds it all. Minerals rise. Through soil, water flows through hidden roots, nourishing trunks that stand as pillars for a sky that forgets to turn. You feel that same warmth inside you, the part of you that believes in seasons, even when the world falls silent. So you lie among these forests in your mind, a witness to this quiet revolution, a patient green resistance that does not yield to the endless sun or the unbroken dark. Life finds its dawn within, a bloom waiting for its own secret sunrise. And as you drift among roots and branches, among creatures that dream beneath frozen bark and endless leaf, you listen for another breath, the deep, molten hum beneath your feet that promises that the world still turns in its own hidden ways, even when the sky does not. And as you drift among these waiting forests, you listen for that hidden hum, a soft reminder that beneath roots and rock, something ancient still stirs, carrying its warmth upward, promising that even in the deepest dark, new light may one day rise. You follow that promise deeper now, sinking into the memory of motion that still lives within this quiet earth. You lie still, yet you feel the ghost of spin, the leftover echo of a world that once turned beneath your bones. You remember storms that raced across oceans, clouds pulled westward by invisible hands. You remember wind that wrapped the planet in whispers, rain that fell because the sky never slept. Somewhere in your mind, you can still hear the hush of that restless breath. You drift through the molten heart, where metals swirl and currents flow like slow rivers of fire. Even when the surface pauses, deep below, iron and nickel slip and churn, carrying heat outward in steady pulses. This hidden spin shapes the magnetic field, an unseen shield that wraps the earth, catching storms of charged particles sent by the sun's steady blaze. Without the spin above, the field changes too, its dance shifting into something slower, softer, yet still alive. Above this buried motion, you imagine continents that once drifted like puzzle pieces on a restless sea of rock. They still move, inch by inch, guided by the warm breath below. Mountains rise, valleys sink, ocean floors open wide. You think of ancient collisions that built the peaks you stood beneath, of hidden plates that glide past each other in the dark. Even now, in this still world, they drift on silent reminders that not all motion comes from the spin of the sky. You picture the oceans that remember the spin too. Once currents wrapped the globe in wide gyres, spiraling warmth from equator to pole. Now, with no turning to push them, they move slower, pulled instead by salinity, by heat from the sun that never sets, by cold that lingers under frozen stars. The ocean dreams of motion, its tides lifted and lowered by the moon, its hidden rivers still seeking balance in the hush. You lie here in the hush, sensing how motion lingers in every drop of water, every breath of wind that might yet stir. You see storms in memory, hurricanes that gathered over warm seas, spun by the Coriolis force, their vast arms reaching out like dancers caught in a spiral. Without spin, such storms cannot rise, but the air still remembers its molecules shaped by eons of turning. A breeze might still slip down a mountain slope at dusk, or gather in valleys warmed by the sun's stubborn light, and within you, your own memory of motion stirs. Your heart beats, a tiny drum in the dark. Blood flows through narrow rivers, carrying warmth from your core to your fingertips. Breath slips in and out, an echo of tides that do not forget to rise and fall. You are a collection of small, faithful movements, eyelids that flutter in sleep, muscles that twitch in dreams, thoughts that drift like drifting clouds. You imagine how people live in this world where spin has paused but motion lingers. They build homes that face the endless sun or the endless night. Some craft great sails to catch stray winds that drift along the edge of dusk. Some dig deep, tapping the hidden warmth to power quiet cities. They farm the dusklands, grow forests that sway in winds born of ancient memory. They tell stories of how the world once turned, tales that pass from voice to voice like currents slipping through the deep dot. You drift through those stories now. You hear old songs sung around fires on the frozen plains, where elders remind children that once the sun rose and fell, and winds roared across wide fields, carrying seeds and rain. In the bright lands, storytellers sit beneath canopies of leaves that never see night, spinning fables of storms that circled the globe, of night skies once brushed with dancing lights called aurora. You think of the aurora, curtains of green, and reed that shimmered near the poles, born from the restless dance between the Earth's magnetic shield and the sun's charged breath. Without the spin to stir that shield, the lights might dim, but the sky still holds traces of them, faint, glows that whisper in the farthest nights, a memory painted on the dark. You lie here, wrapped in these memories, a traveler in the hush. You wonder if the earth dreams of its own restless youth, of when it spun faster, days shorter, nights fleeting, of when molten rock spilled across its surface in wild rivers, shaping continents that drift to this day, of when the moon, newly born, was so close that its pull lifted tides miles high, sculpting coastlines with every retreat, maybe in its stillness. The earth holds this memory deep in its core, a soft heartbeat that will not vanish, a promise that nothing ever truly stops, only slows, only shifts into a quieter shape. You feel this promise settle in you. Motion hides in the smallest places, in the shifting of atoms, in the spin of electrons, in the gentle tremble of heat moving through stone. Even in absolute stillness, the quantum world hums, particles flicker in and out of certainty, borrowing energy from silence. Nothing stays perfectly still. Even silence has a secret vibration. So you breathe into this thought that the world beneath you, quiet as it seems, carries the echo of its own wild history. The continents drift, the core spins, the seas sigh, the air shivers now and then with a memory of storms. You drift deeper into this hush, feeling your own body as a small, faithful echo of this larger dance. Blood hums, breath slips, eyelids flutter. Within you, a hidden storm of cells and sparks, always moving, always alive. And as you lie here, held by a world that remembers how to spin even when it forgets to turn, you wonder if somewhere in the dark, the earth dreams of spinning again. If the silent heart beneath your feet gathers strength for some distant dawn when the world might wake. Stretch and remember how to dance once more around the sun. And as you drift with this thought, you listen for the next hush, the soft breath of gravity's secret promise that even without spin, the pull that binds you here never forgets how to hold you close. You let that pull lift you now, higher, until you hover above cities that flicker in a world where clocks have lost their way. You float above rooftops, quiet towers, windows glowing like embers in an endless dusk. Streets curve like veins through this sleeping body of stone and steel. But the old rhythm that once guided them, sunrise lighting office windows, sunset turning lamps on one by one, has slipped away. Without dawn, no alarms whisper you awake. Without dusk, no streetlights bloom in a gentle sequence as shadows stretch and gather. Now the lights burn without reason. Office floors flicker at noon that never arrives. Neon signs hum over doorways that never close. Bedroom windows glow long after the body has forgotten when to rest. You drift through empty intersections, where traffic lights change colors for no one, their patient cycles now gentle ghosts of order in a time that no longer ticks. You see shops half lit, their displays frozen in unending invitation. Somewhere, a diner sign buzzes against the hush, its letters humming open when the night never promises to end. Above it all, you sense how people inside these cities adapt to a world where the clock hands have vanished. Some grow gardens under artificial suns, timed to mimic morning and night. Others blacken windows, drawing curtains tight to cradle themselves in a darkness they must invent to sleep. Children learn to count hours, not by the sun's warm touch, but by the soft blink of digital screens. You pass high-rises where people wander corridors at odd hours, night shift workers whose shift never finds its close. Families who gather for breakfast under ceiling lights, pretending to be dawn. You drift above bedrooms where people sleep behind eye masks, headphones whispering artificial night sounds, rain that never falls, wind that never stirs leaves, oceans that never pull the tide to shore. You slip through parks caught in perpetual glow street lamps, casting long shadows across swings that do not creak because no breeze comes to rock them. Trees reach toward a sky that never fades, their leaves touched forever by a light they did not ask to hold. Even pigeons rest on silent benches, unsure when to wake and flutter back into the restless hum. Yet beneath this confusion, you sense the quiet determination of human hearts to shape time from fragments. In some windows you glimpse families lighting candles for dinner, telling stories that divide one meal from the next. In apartments stacked like paper lanterns, neighbors mark time together, sharing tea, swapping seeds for balcony gardens, reminding each other when to close their eyes and drift into sleep. Somewhere, a poet sits at an open window, scribbling lines that measure hours not by clock but by breath. Somewhere, an artist paints the sun's arc across a canvas ceiling, reminding the walls what it felt like when light moved and shadows danced behind it. You float through subway tunnels that once carried people home in time for dinner or dreams. Now trains slip by on schedules written in memory, a quiet cycle of coming and going with no sunrise to promise a fresh start. Passengers lean against cool windows, eyes half closed, watching stations drift by like chapters in a book. They have half forgotten how to read. You sense how the city hums on street by street, heart by heart, each person crafting their own shape of time. Some live by the beat of bodies alone, hunger calling them to kitchens, sleepiness pulling them under blankets, warmth and touch marking hours softer than any ticking clock. You wonder, floating above these restless lights, what becomes of festivals when no dawn lifts lanterns into pink skies, when fireworks bloom against a night that never yields. You imagine how candles burn beside windows in rituals that still hold meaning, tiny suns flickering promises that tomorrow will still come, even if the sky never moves. And beneath it all, you feel the pulse of hidden clocks, a heartbeat that does not forget the slow turn of drifting countenance far below city streets. Even here, in towers of glass and concrete, the old earth whispers its secrets through pipes and wires, warmth from deep veins, wind from far coasts, rivers of power running like blood beneath the pavement. You rest in this thought that cities, too, are alive, great breathing bodies that bend and adapt when the world's spin goes silent. Lights hum like neurons, streets curve like arteries, people drift like cells carrying warmth through the hushed dot above the skyline. The moon, still, drifts across the frozen face of the sun, a reminder that even when the earth forgets to turn, some clocks drift on in the vast dark. Somewhere beyond these rooftops, stars still pulse out their ancient time, and somewhere deep within each heart below, a small, faithful clock ticks on, counting breaths, counting dreams, counting the hush between waking and sleep. And as you hover above these cities without clocks, you wonder what dreams drift through the wires and windows, carrying secret songs that remember the stars, the winds, the pull that once spun the whole world round. You lift your gaze now, higher beyond the humming lights and silent streets, and find yourself reaching for the quiet companion who never stops moving. The moon. You close your eyes and follow the moon's patient arc, a path traced through blackness, a silver tether looping endlessly around the world that once turned beneath it. While cities pause, forests wait, and oceans hush their restless currents, the moon drifts on, faithful to its orbit, its ancient promise unbroken. You drift alongside it, feeling the soft gravity that binds it to the earth's invisible grasp. Long ago, this pull locked the moon's face toward the planet, one side always watching, the other turned forever into shadow. You imagine the moon gazing down now at a world that has fallen silent beneath its steady watch. Does it wonder why the seas no longer dance as wildly to its tug? Why do the winds no longer echo its pull across restless waves? Once, the earth's spin shaped the tides with the moon's gentle coaxing, a push and pull that lifted oceans into waves, drew them across coasts, filled salt marshes and emptied bays in a slow, rhythmic breath. Now, with no spin to carry them forward, the tides hesitate. They rise, they fall, but without the planet's turning hand, they do so with a softened voice. A hush has settled between water and sky. You float beside the moon as it glides above this quiet. Its surface is pocked with ancient scars, reminders of collisions, impacts, the violent past that shaped its calm present. You think of how the moon was born from the earth's own restless youth, rock torn free by a cosmic strike, molten pieces gathering until they found one another, settled into orbit, bound by gravity's whisper. You drift through that memory, seeing flashes of fire and stone, a newborn Earth spinning so quickly that its days were only hours long. Back then, the moon's pull worked to slow the spin, lengthening days, gentling nights, giving time its familiar shape. Now the moon circles a world that forgot how to move, yet it still pulls, patient as ever, lifting tides that remember the dance. You picture coastal towns where the sea still breathes in and out, not as it once did, but enough to remind fishermen and seabirds that the moon's tug is not gone. Salt flats gleam under a frozen sun, the tide's edge traced in shimmering lines like fingerprints on glass. Crabs and shorebirds find new rhythms, guided by this softer tide that whispers secrets of a world that once spun wildly under a younger moon. High above, you drift over craters that have held the same shadows for millions of years. The moon's night and day still trade places every 2 Earth weeks, a slow rotation that stands in quiet contrast to the Earth's sudden hush. Here, time feels different. Here, the silence hums with ancient memories. You imagine astronauts. Long ago, standing on this dust, they looked back at Earth and saw a swirl of blue and white clouds racing westward, storms curling into great spirals. They knew the spin gave weather its shape, days their length, life its familiar heartbeat. From here the Earth must look so still now, blue and white, yes, but with clouds that linger too long, storms that forget how to turn. Yet even here you sense motion. Tiny meteors slip past the moon's glow. Grains of dust strike its surface with quiet pops too soft for human ears. The moon drifts on through fields of forgotten stone, trailing an invisible path that never falters. You wonder how it feels for the moon to carry this orbit alone, loyal to a partner who no longer dances beside it. Does it dream of Earth's swirling storms, its spinning shadows, the old rhythm that once tugged its orbit outward millimeter by millimeter? Or does it find comfort in the hush, a chance to cradle the Earth in calm, circling endlessly through the soft dark? Beneath you, the Earth's molten heart still hums. Continents drift so slowly that mountains rise and seas open without needing the spin above. But the moon notices even this. Its pull still shapes tectonic plates, nudging rock, guiding subtle tremors that whisper through the crust. Even stillness listens for the moon's voice. You drift alongside this lonely satellite and feel the hush around you stretch wide, wrapping planet and moon in a shared silence that hums like a lullaby. Somewhere below, wolves might lift their heads to this ancient companion, howling to a face that does not answer but always stays near. Somewhere, a child on a rooftop traces the moon's path, wondering why it slides across the same stars while the world beneath stands still. You breathe with the moon's rhythm, a soft orbit that carries secrets of beginnings and quiet promises of what might return. You sense how the moon holds the Earth close. Even now, an old friend whose gentle tug keeps the planet's axis from wandering too far, whose orbit steadies the hush with its patient circle, and you drift here, wrapped in this lunar lullaby, feeling the pull that once shaped storms and guided sailors across uncharted seas. You wonder if, someday, the Earth might wake again, spin once more beneath this watchful moon, return to a dance that never truly forgets its steps. And as you float beside this quiet companion, you listen for the next whisper, the secret, rustle of winds that might yet remember how to find their way back home. Your thoughts drift downward now, sinking through soft skies and frozen clouds, through hushed forests and stilled oceans, all the way into the deep warmth far beneath your resting body. Deep below your feet, where rock melts into liquid metal, the earth's heart beats with a silent spin of its own. Here, the restless churning of molten iron creates an invisible shield, a magnetic field that wraps the whole planet like a hidden blanket. You rest within this field every moment of your life, though you cannot see it or feel it with your skin. It holds the sky safe, turning aside storms of charged particles hurled by the sun, bending solar winds so they brush harmlessly past the atmosphere. You imagine this field now as a soft cocoon, threads of invisible lines weaving around you in loops that arc from pole to pole. Each line curves through the sky, dives deep into the Earth's crust, circles back out again, a dance of energy that protects every breath you take. Without this shield, the sun's winds would strip away the gentle layers of air you breathe. They would peel off the fragile cover of gases that hold warmth close and block deadly radiation. The sky, you know, soft blue by day, scattered with stars by night, would thin until it could no longer cradle oceans, forests, cities. So, you lie here, feeling the hush above you, and sense this shield as a quiet promise, spun from the restless motion of a hidden core. But tonight, you wonder, what if that restless churning deep inside begins to slow? What if the stillness above the crust creeps inward, softening the spin that keeps the molten iron flowing? The Earth's spin shapes the cores, dance to a push that helps stir liquid metal in looping currents. If the spin stops, what gentle changes ripple inward through miles of stone and heat? You drift through that thought, seeing layers of rock-like pages in an ancient book. The crust above stays cold and still, but deeper down, the mantle moves, heavy and slow. Beneath that, the outer core swirls like a dark river of iron and nickel, its flow shaped by heat rising from the even hotter heart within the solid. In a core, a sphere of metal as bright as the surface of the sun. If only you could see it. It is here, in this restless river, that the magnetic field is born. Moving metal generates a quiet storm of energy, electric currents that loop and twist into the protective shield you rest within now. If this hidden dance slows, the shield weakens, the invisible lines grow thin. You picture them now, fraying, like threads of silk brushed by too much wind. Still, the earth is patient. Even in stillness above, the core keeps its secrets. It may churn for millions of years more, fed by the heat left over from the planet's birth and by the steady pull of the moon that tugs at oceans and deep rock alike. You lie still and sense how everything is connected. The moon's orbit, the tide's breath, the spin of your planet's heart. Somewhere far above the poles, the magnetic field spills out in delicate curtains of light. You imagine auroras, drifting across the frozen sky, ribbons of green and pink that flicker and dance when solar winds slip through the shield's seams and collide with air. These ghostly lights remind you that the field is not perfect armor, but a living, shifting shell. It breathes, it pulses, it cracks open now and then to let starlight write colors across the night. You wonder about creatures who have always trusted this field without knowing its name, birds that migrate by feeling its hidden lines, sea turtles that swim vast oceans guided by its faint touch. Even your own body hums with tiny magnets in your brain and blood molecules that drift in time with this field, aligning in ways you may never sense but that bind you to the earth more deeply than feet pressed to soil. and still you drift. Deeper, feeling how this shield holds stories older than cities, older than forests. Mars once spun with its own molten core, wrapped in its own magnetic hush. But when the red planet's core cooled and slowed, its shield faded, and the sun's winds peeled its sky away. Now Mars lies bare and cold, a memory of what can happen when the inside goes still. Yet here, inside your blue world, you trust the warmth that flickers below, the molten heart that keeps spinning even when the crust above forgets to turn. You sense that deep within iron and nickel, motion dreams its own dreams, carrying the promise that a shield can hold long after the surface falls silent. Above you, the auroras still ripple, solar winds still arrive, messengers from the suns. Restless fire, brushing softly at the edge of the field that shields your breath, your heartbeat, your drifting thoughts. You lie inside this invisible shell, wrapped in lines that curve and bend. A reminder that even unseen things can shape your days and nights. You picture those magnetic lines like lullabies, countless threads stitching earth to sky, sky too. Sun, sun, 2 stars beyond. Each loop hums a promise that for now, for tonight, you are safe inside this cradle of energy and heat. In this hush, you breathe out and feel the quiet pulse beneath your feet, a warmth that remembers the world's first fires, the storms that shaped continents, the spin that once flung oceans across the globe. Even now, that warmth stirs the shield that keeps your sky gentle, your forests green, your seas alive, and in the hush you drift with this memory of motion deep underground, feeling how the field cradles you while winds above search for their forgotten paths. You lie inside these unseen lines, listening for the winds that might carry a secret back to the waiting sky, a whisper that the stillness does not last forever. You breathe in the hush and feel, beneath your resting body, the faintest memory of motion, a patient stirring like the soft exhale of a sleeper about to wake. You imagine it now, deep in the molten heart of the earth. Currents of liquid metal swirl a little faster, folding into one another like ribbons of light beneath stone. Heat and pressure coax the iron to dance again. Small loops twist into larger ones, spinning with a hidden urgency that rises through rock and crust, reaching for the silent mantle that once turned alongside it. Above, the oceans hold their breath. They sense this gentle nudge, a push that hums through the seabeds, lifting currents that had drifted aimless and cold. Somewhere far below the frozen surface, ancient rivers of salt water wake, curling into gyres that remember how to carry warmth from the equator to the poles. You picture these currents like sleeping snakes, scales glittering with the memory of motion, now uncoiling in the dark dot in the sky. Winds begin to whisper once more. They gather in thin streams far above mountains that stand watch under the sun's steady gaze. The jet streams stretch their limbs, finding old paths, feeling out new ones. They test the edges of countenance, the ridges of sleeping ranges, the open plains where tall grasses bend to greet them after so long without a breeze. You drift with this first breath of turning air, imagining how clouds begin to stir, soft sheets of water vapor caught in the slow spin of a world rediscovering its rhythm. They drift where they are pulled, weaving shadows across lands that have forgotten what it feels like to watch morning come and evening go. And now you feel the sun's light shift ever so slightly across your closed eyelids. The dawn does not stay pinned in one place. It slides, golden and gentle, brushing one horizon and then the next, waking forests and rivers that stretch and sigh beneath its warmth. Shadows that once clung to endless night slip away, giving way to the quiet promise of day. The tides feel it too, the moon's loyal tug, reuniting with the ocean's motion. High tides breathe a little deeper, low tides sigh into waiting beaches. The push and pull becomes a heartbeat again, a pulse that washes sand and stone, that carves the edges of coasts and feeds drifting plankton who rise once more to meet the light. Somewhere in the hush of this turning world, creatures feel it too. Birds lift on warming currents, wings wide, riding invisible paths that carry them across continents, newly alive with motion. Leaves flutter on branches that remember how to sway. Roots stretch in dark soil, sensing the spin above the seasons. Beginning to return, you picture cities waking in this new rhythm, streets humming with the soft tick of clocks that once more mean something. Lights flicker out as the sun's arc blesses windows and rooftops. People blink at the sky, feeling dawn as if for the first time, stepping out to greet shadows that shift and stretch and shrink again with each passing hour. You breathe in this reawakening, and you sense how time itself loosens from its frozen hold. The earth's spin is more than motion. It is a clock wound by gravity and heat, by ancient collisions and hidden fires. Without it, days dissolve into timeless waiting. With it, each second finds its place again, each heartbeat a quiet note in the world's gentle song. And yet, this spin is no violent rush. It does not wake all at once. It rolls forward like a slow tide, patient and forgiving. It hums through rock and ocean, through atmosphere and clouds, whispering to life that the pause is over, that stillness has given way to motion once more. You lie in this in-between, the hush before the full breath of turning air. You rest at the edge of a world, remembering how to move. Beneath your ribs, your own heartbeat keeps time with this new pulse. You feel the weight of gravity's gentle grip holding you close, and you sense how the outward push of spin will lighten it just a little, letting you drift a touch freer upon the ground. Perhaps the earth, like you, sometimes needs a pause, a soft moment to remember where it has been, to listen to the silence between beats, to gather warmth before spinning forward again. And perhaps you, too, carry this lesson within your breath, that stillness and motion belong together, that the quiet and the spin are each half of a deeper rhythm. Outside, the winds travel farther now. They braid together stories left behind by the still years, grains of sand carried from one shore to the next, pollen drifting to where flowers wait, seeds spun out to root in soil that trembles softly beneath the turning sky. You imagine this new spin like a lullaby for every hidden current, every slow heartbeat deep within Earth's molten chest. Motion stirs new storms, feeds old rivers, shapes the paths of birds, the lift of leaves, the swirl of auroras above the poles where the magnetic field hums its constant, quiet promise. And you lie here feeling this hush inside you, this patient space between one world and the next. You listen for the first winds brushing the walls of your house, the faint shift of tides breathing at distant shores, the subtle turn of stars overhead marking the passage of time once more. You are cradled by this thought that the earth spins because it remembers. It remembers collisions and fires, gravity and tides, the endless push and pull of the sun and moon. It remembers that life blooms best in motion in the turning days, the shifting nights, the gentle drift between light and dark. So you breathe, slow and calm, and let the spin begin again inside you too. You imagine your own inner tide, the gentle swirl of blood and thought, the quiet cycle of rest and waking that shapes your days as surely as the earth's turning shapes dawn and dusk. In this soft return to motion, you feel small and vast all at once, one breath in a world that spins through darkness and light, holding oceans, forests, cities, dreams. You lie still, yet you are moving too, carried by the turning crust, the stirring mantle, the molten heart that hums its promise far below. And as you drift toward sleep, rocked by this patient spin, you wonder what other worlds turn in the darkness. What distant planets breathe their own hush and motion, dreaming of their own suns and moons and the quiet promise that even in the deepest stillness, there is always a memory of how to begin again.